I read their Troublesome Crush by Xan West. Here's the official summary. In this queer, polyamorous MF romance novella, two metamours realize they have crushes on each other while planning their shared partner's birthday party together. Ernest, a Jewish autistic demiromantic queer fat trans man submissive, and Nora, a Jewish disabled queer fat femme cis woman switch, have to contend with an age gap, a desire to not mess up their lovely polyamorous dynamic as metamours, the fact that Ernest has never been attracted to a cis person before, and the reality that they are romantically attracted to each other. All while planning their dominant's birthday party and trying to do a really good job. This low-conflict foodie romance novella by Xan West includes a queer trans man / cis woman romance, forced proximity and friends to lovers trope, and demiromantic, bisexual, pansexual, trans, fat, autistic, disabled, diabetic, PTSD, and depression representation. It is impossible to discuss this book without getting into LGBTQIA+ ideology. I don't try to hide my beliefs, but I know no one's coming to me for political commentary. But I want it to be known that I am pro-trans rights, since the biggest cans I ever were attached to a trans woman. If any TERFs with a bigger rack want to convince me to come to their side, by all means, have at it. Anyway, this book was a unique experience. Every page I would yell into the ebook,
"Are you kidding me?"
And then I'd flip the page and repeat the same sentiment. It was the sort of high-energy experience I thought I could only get by being a taxi driver stuck in New York gridlock. It's a book best enjoyed with one hand holding your Kindle and the other making the universal sign for, "This guy is unbelievable." What's even more remarkable is that I read it all in one sitting. Nisio Isin is the only other fiction author I've been able to devour so quickly and easily, and that's because he's a genius. There was something uniquely cringe about Troublesome Crush that turned it into such a page-turner. Why is this book such a spectacle, as opposed to other pronoun-obsessed lefty literature? I would like to bring to the stand The Bestseller Code, the 2016 book by Jody Archer and Matthew L. Jockers. It's 200-some pages of analyzing a study where they fed a bunch of bestsellers into an AI to see what they have in common, such as recurring themes, plot structure, and writing style. It makes a lot of bold claims about being able to predict what makes a best-selling manuscript. Now, writers should always just, follow their heart or whatever, but this is the primary book I'd recommend to anyone itching to make a novel. Between analyzing bigger trends, there's a lot of solid writing advice, like you should use an active voice instead of a passive voice, or your protagonist should be the one driving the plot. It's all things you would find in most how to write a book books, but these nuggets of advice hit a little harder when they can back it up with data and show how often best-selling books across all genres execute on these concepts. One of the most memorable parts of the Bestseller Code is an entire chapter where they break down why 50 Shades of Grey got so gosh darn popular. 50 Shades writing sucks, the characters suck, and it managed to offend both pearl-clutching churchgoers and hardcore kinksters alike. Everyone's in agreement. This book is terrible. So why did we all read it in 2011? Andrew Diamond gives an apt summary of the chapter in his review. The analysis showed that E.L. James, despite what some might call a lack of style, had hit on every element of the blockbuster novel, from topical makeup to structure to character. The analysis also showed that, based on the number of paragraphs devoted to each topic, the book was more about close interpersonal relationships than sex in general. And close personal relationships, the author reminds us, is one of the top themes common to all bestsellers. While the overall public discussion of 50 Shades tended to focus more on the sex, the computer was able to see that readers were experiencing, perhaps on a less conscious level, the same sort of interpersonal relations that fascinate them in the genres of mystery, thriller, and historical drama. Even more interesting, Archers and Jockers point out, is the plot structure of 50 Shades, which is a subtle and unusual variation of one of the 6 basic structures common to all bestsellers. James' novel generally follows plotline 4, which Christopher Booker in the 7 Basic Plots calls Rebirth. Archer and Jockers point out that these plots tend to see the main character experience change, renewal, and some sort of transformation. The twist that James puts on this basic plot is that, instead of following the plot's typical emotional pattern of beginning high, low end, she created a series of highs and lows throughout the book, which occurred at such regular intervals that the graph of them looks almost like a perfect sine wave. Archers and Jockers referred to this pattern as the emotional rhythm of the plot. Outside of the Harry Potter series, which was primarily aimed at young readers, the only adult book in the past 20 years whose sales numbers compared to 50 Shades is Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code. The author points out that, although the Da Vinci Code's basic plot differs from 50 Shades, the two books share an almost identical emotional rhythm. Page 106 of the bestseller code shows a graph of the two plot lines, with the high points, low points, and inflection points of both novels appearing almost in lockstep. Now, who would have thought to compare those two books, or even mention them in the same breath? Both were runaway bestsellers, and on an emotional level, both provided a strikingly similar reading experience, despite their difference in topic, style, tone, and genre. So with that in mind, I wonder if their Troublesome Crush is doing something similar. There is a rhythm to this book, and that pulse might be what's drawn so many people to this story. If you ran it through the AI discussed in the bestseller code, I doubt it would classify it as a romance. The vibe of this book oscillates between a bitter sociology lecture and the Berenstain Bears go to the bakery, because what's interesting about Troublesome Crush is how quickly and suddenly it ricochets between tone. The protagonist, Ernest, is a big cuddly ball of anxiety. His twee way of seeing the world makes me think he's a miscast Muppet, made to gently explain to children why they need to be kind to their autistic classmate. And despite his childlike way of processing the mundane, he's also able to strut around like he has a PhD in gender studies whenever topics come up. It's a book with incredibly jarring mood swings, which makes it hilarious in a so bad it's good, watch out we're coming for your crown of the room kind of way. At the end of their Troublesome Crush is an excerpt from a fantasy series by the same author, and it was a total snooze. You'd think a fantasy series with like magics and dragons and shit would have more intrigue than a low-conflict foodie romance novella, but after reading the excerpt, I could only shrug. Fantasy book went way harder with the neo-pronouns, but that's not something so wild and outrageous that I'll wheeze and guffaw at the unbridled cringe. It is nowhere near the emotional whiplash insanity as Troublesome Crush. Much of the conflict in their Troublesome Crush comes from the anticipation of something bad. Ernest is constantly afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing. Everything always turns out just peachy every time. He doesn't have to get over his anxieties or make any strives for self-improvement. The narrative insists, this precious ball of sunshine is just perfect the way he is. And that's the general attitude the narrative holds for all of the characters. The text insists that they are all just so sweet and so charming to everyone else, that is, the mean old bigoted cisheads just slightly off screen, who don't understand. It's a real us against the world kind of mindset, and everyone in this found family has an inherent respect and understanding of each other. And that has to be why this book found its sincere audience. It's soft, it's gentle, and the queer characters are always right. It's bubblegum escapism. It's not challenging, but it's also a little too eager to remind you why their specific slice of queer ideology is unquestionably correct. And if you're one of those guys who loves pontificating about gender diversity labels, this book is speaking your language. But this is a true case of one man's paradise is another man's hell. Let me rapid fire through my train of thought before I get into why I hate everyone here. Alright, first, you don't need to make your characters likable to make a good story. Second, a strong villain or morally dubious character can make a story more exciting, but third, their Troublesome Crush is a deliberately low-effort book, so the only villain is Ernest's anxiety. Fourth, I find Ernest unlikable, but not in the way you'd find a good villain unlikable. Let me tell you why Ernest is so uniquely unpleasant. He's constantly twiddling around and humming, and if he's feeling particularly bold, he'll break into song. Sometimes he'll take a break from singing show tunes and discussing kink praxis to feel bummed out about how fat he is, but it never occurs to him to hit the gym. Maybe he'd be a little less fidgety after a leisurely stroll on the treadmill, but any attempt at self-improvement is too big and too scary for our darling little cupcake boy. But he's autistic. So am I, dumb shit. His autism manifests as twiddling around and song-talking. Mine manifests as starting the day with 100 push-ups. Which makes me wonder, what's the third element of autism, so we can get a balanced rock, paper, scissors? Because I know I could kick this doughboy's ass. However, I'm not so sure I could take Gideon in a fight. He's the boyfriend of Nora and Ernest, typically referred to as the daddy of the polycule. I don't know if that's an ironic thing, like a 300-pound mobster nicknamed Tiny, or if he's truly the highest T fish in the soy pond. The only hint on his stats or build is that he's slim enough to get top surgery, which means he's done enough gender transitioning that no one will think I'm railing on a chick if I give this nerd a noogie. And goddamn does this nerd sound like a monumental pain in the ass. The plot of this book centers around Nora and Ernest planning a birthday party for Gideon, right? There is an incredibly mild plot twist in the later half of the book. Gideon has 2 birthday parties. He has one with his blood family and his chosen family. I'll let the text explain. It was Gideon's birthday, observed, and Ernest was trying not to spill his excitement all over Gideon, who was in a rather grumpy mood. They'd gone to Gideon's blood family on Friday, his actual 36th birthday, which had included way too much fucking misgendering and general awfulness from Gideon's father. Gideon was, as usual, still dealing with a depression flare a couple days later, the day they were planning to celebrate his birthday with his queer chosen family. He had used his DS safe word yesterday morning when the flare was in full force and the safe word was still in effect. Ernest wasn't surprised. He was glad Gideon didn't feel like he had to be in daddy mode when he was dealing with depression. It was better for them both to take a break. Gideon had set the date of the chosen family celebration after his birthday again. It had puzzled Ernest the first time he'd done that. Why set it when he was likely to feel awful? Why not have it beforehand so he could actually enjoy it? Gideon had explained that chosen family was the only thing that really helped him balance the awfulness of his blood family. And if he had a fun celebration beforehand, his blood family celebration would hit him even harder. It made Ernest's heart ache, but he got it, and was quietly relieved that he was estranged from his blood family, didn't have to deal with these kinds of balancing acts. The party would help Gideon feel less alone, and remind him that there were people in his life who did value him and see him for who he is. Dude, you're 36. Why are you still hanging out with your family if they suck? I was 16 when I walked out of my shitshow family, and I'm dumber than you. I'm gonna guess they're footing the bill for your upscale Manhattan apartment. There's no other reason to keep entertaining them if they make you so miserable. But even if that's the case, 36. Be a man and tell your dad to get fucked if he's gonna misgender you. Or take the high road and accept in your heart that dear old dad is stuck in his ways. I know your brain's not done developing till you're in your mid-20s, but even the tragically horse-damaged slow kid can grow a spine by their 30s. I also have to wonder just what's the level of interpersonal tension here? If Ernest was Gideon's +1 to the blood family birthday, there has to be some degree of acceptance from the blood family, right? Given how frequently everyone here has to announce their intersectional identities, there is zero chance Ernest was being introduced to Gideon's family as his very special roommate. And the concept of planning a second birthday party to get yourself through the first one is another level of exuberance and hassle I can't wrap my head around. Once the found family birthday party is rolling, Gideon continues to be a certifiable pain in the ass. Like bearing caffeine and sugar, Ernest said after nudging him awake. How about you sit up and have some before you shower? Gideon groaned. Do I have to? No, we can have your birthday party while you sleep, if that's what you need. But I do think that you might be sad you missed it. Nora's here, and she's dressed as Effie, you know.
Effie, huh? I do like Effie. Her and Sam have a certain something. It's kinda like a DS.
Effie is her favorite character in the movie.
I didn't know. Well, I don't want to miss seeing that, I guess. Can I be grumpy about it?
It's your party. You can grump all you want to. Gideon groaned, but he did sit up and take the soda.
No need to babysit me. Go get ready yourself.
I'm on it.
A few moments later.
People started trickling in, and the apartment began to fill with chatter and laughter. Gideon took his place in the corner, and people came to him one by one, like he was the monarch that needed greeting. Ernest's chair plan was working. Nobody stayed too long, because the only thing close by was an ottoman near his feet that wasn't particularly comfortable to sit on. I have to wonder if the fun to pain in the ass ratio makes this second birthday worth the effort. Before going further, I'd like to remind everyone of my video on Litterbox Comics. I spent a solid 10 minutes hypothetically asking why in the hell this cat family is doing all of these normie family things if it stresses them all out. All of these hashtag relatable family moments in the comic are lost on me. since growing up was more like an episode of Cops than the average Norman Rockwell painting. However, Litterbox is about a nuclear family with 2.5 kids. I kind of expect someone who's solidly middle class and willingly raising children to have that turbo-normie mindset and wanting to play nice with societal conventions. Meanwhile, Troublesome Crush is supposed to be all radical and queer, but there's still a whole lot of huffing and puffing over, I don't want to do this, but I really should, since that's what's expected, and I sure don't want to offend anyone. Oh hum. And not even in a discreet hone tatamae kind of way, since no one's able to keep how they feel to themselves. And to all that, I give a hearty fuck you. I thought gay guys were supposed to have fun since all they do is fuck, and if you're even deeper in the alphabet gang, I'd assume the fun ratio goes up since the sex gets even crazier, but instead we just see a whole lot of futzing around about doing the right thing. God, it's insufferable. And way more irritating, so I thought the whole point of being openly queer is striking out on your own terms and forging your own path. And that brings me to the last character, Nora, the Jewish disabled queer fat femme cis woman switch. All of these identity qualifiers, and this book never clues you into her cup size. But Troublesome Crush makes it clear that this is a big gal. Here's an excerpt from the chapter where Ernest visits Nora's place.
Okay. He took a breath. You seem bigger, fatter, yes, but also just bigger in all the ways you are, if that makes sense. She gave him the best smile. He felt full of bubbles again, just like at the cupcake shop.
This is home,
She said, and he thought she might leave it at that, but after a couple seconds, she continued.
I don't have to be careful in how I move, because I set up the space so it can hold me accessible. I can relax, not worrying about bumping into things, knocking things over, tripping and falling, trying to fit into spaces that weren't made for bodies like mine. That's a big part of it.
In this scene, Troublesome Crush comes oh so close to describing something with some fetish appeal, and it completely falls flat. That's not even me talking as a guy who's into fat chicks, but instead of getting into the juiciness of how big she is, the narrative suddenly morphs into a DEI workplace meeting about accessibility for people with bigger bodies. Fucking yawn. Ernest likes to bake, he's giddy seeing Nora let her stomach flab blow, and nothing horny comes of it. No imagining fattening her up, no imagining himself getting fatter, his mind doesn't wander into how he could strategically use this fat accessible space to cop a feel. What a gentleman, and I mean that as an insult. Eventually, in the epilogue, we get another intimate scene with Nora and Ernest, and if you couldn't piece it together by the cover art, yes, these two greaseballs eventually start dating. For their intimate evening together, Nora ties a harness on Ernest. While in the harness, he bakes cornbread for her. She feeds him a cucumber, and it's all dandy. Then Ernest sings show tunes on his way to the train. Gotta end the story by reminding everyone of our protag's unmatched quirkiness. This is kind of an aside, but fuck it. I'm gonna explode if I don't bring this up. But after Troublesome Crush, I read the breakup to her, which can be summarized as the author's thinly disguised Taylor Swift fanfiction. The whole thing reads like a Hallmark movie threw up on a book, but I needed something unquestionably heterosexual that didn't take itself too seriously to cleanse my palate. So early in the book, Taylor Swift meets up with her mom at a vegan restaurant, right? Here's how they introduce the diner.
The restaurant, on the fancy stretch of Mid-Melrose, is one of my favorites. While I'm not vegan, I strictly follow whatever diet involves consuming this place's chorizo burritos in high quantities. I'm going to need some exquisite vegan horchata to wash from my mouth the taste of my conversation with Max.
Now, I've never had vegan Mexican food, but this immediately paints a pretty clear picture of indulgence. It's the kind of vegan food that transcends dietary boundaries and lures in even the most carnivorous. Taylor Swift reaching for the horchata after a bad encounter with her ex works as a testament to the comfort and escape good food can offer. Later, when Tay-Tay is sitting down with her mom, here's how the conversation plays out.
Everything is great, I lie. Should we get the nachos? This underhanded ploy works exactly like I expected. The mention of nachos distracts my mother. I can make those at home, she says disapprovingly. I purse my lips to suppress my laugh. My mother has long held the philosophy of never ordering from a restaurant something she already has a tried and true recipe for, which for me includes the entire menu. My mom, however, former housewife and personal chef to my dad and me my whole life, has developed a formidable culinary repertoire. While I'm not certain she could recreate these nachos, which infused dragon fruit with mole drizzled cashew cheese covering effervescently crunchy chips? I don't point this out. Okay, you pick, I reply. Why don't we get the gorditas? She declares. While what she said is grammatically a question, she's not asking.
Alright, those nachos sound unmatched. I've never encountered anything like them. Would jump at the chance for a sample. And then I realized I never had this reaction while reading Troublesome Crush. Not once, not even a little. None of the food sounds good enough to elicit any sort of reaction while I was reading. It was just sort of there. The little bits about food from the breakup tour slapped me awake, and I realized yet another area where Troublesome Crush has failed. Which is pretty funny, because Troublesome Crush, officially, formally, in their Kindle description, identifies as a foodie romance. Here's some excerpts from Troublesome Crush where they discuss food. I'll start with the scene from Chapter 1.
Oh, no pressure at all. What if he didn't like it? He closed his eyes as he tasted it, and damn, the texture of the vanilla buttercream was unreal. And the cake was so soft, so moist, and not as sweet as he'd expected, which totally balanced the intense sweetness of the frosting. He felt himself grin. It was the perfect cupcake. Amazing, stupendous. He wanted to take this cupcake dancing.
Later, at the same cupcake shop.
And her face. It was like she was trancing out on the cupcake. She was making that humming pleased noise, but deeper in her throat, and it was delicious to hear. Plus, she was doing that wriggle that said she really liked it. Yay! She offered him the other half of the cupcake, and he ate it, closing his eyes, leaning back against the wall, savoring the marzipan chocolate taste of it, the richness of the buttercream.
Fuck!
It was good.
2 chapters later.
He would think about this later. Right now, he would concentrate on serving the tea and take all of the pleasure he could from that. He asked her how she took it, made sure to put the milk in first, then the tea, and then the Splenda she requested. He explained what each of the sandwiches were. He had made 3 kinds: tuna, cucumber, and cheddar apple. He thought he had made everything small enough that she could try each thing, including the scones and the cake, and he was interested to note that she went for the tuna first, but removed the top, took the cheddar out of 2 of the sandwiches to eat it plain, and made yummy noises over the cucumber sandwich. She noticed him looking at her plate and said,
Oh, I'm sure it's all wonderful as it is. I just need to watch my protein to carb ratio if I'm gonna try a scone and a bit of cake. I just couldn't resist the cucumber because those are my favorite.
So next time, open-faced sandwiches are better? She gave him the biggest grin.
There will be a next time.
Well, I mean, this is one of my favorite things to do. So, if you like it, yes, I would like there to be a next time.
How did you learn to do this?
From my friend Marlene, who comes to the Gender Fabulous Kink Munch I co-host. She's a sissy maid, and she throws tea parties, teaches tea service. It's her scone recipe, and she made the jam you're eating, actually. He loved bragging about Marlene. She was awesome.
Oh wow, it does taste homemade. Goes with clotted cream and jam. Yum.
And a little later, Ernest has a lot of anticipation over cooking for everyone. Here's what we hear about the food.
Ernest lay in bed thinking about dietary restrictions for breakfast. No aged cheese for Judith because of her migraines. No food where Nora couldn't control the portion size of the carbs. He wasn't doing something like those sandwiches again, so that meant no casserole or frittatas. Of course, it needed to be kosher for Pesach too. He was going to make his special mozzarella scrambled eggs that Judith loved, he decided. He could use the leftover potatoes from the Seder to do the fried potatoes Gideon liked. He made a note of the menu in his calendar and set his alarm.
And for breakfast.
They all made their way into the living room, and Ernest pointed out the snacks and the movie list, telling them to pick a movie, and that he would be back very soon with the food. Cooking would help, It was the most grounding thing he could do, really. After he got the eggs going in the pan, he sliced up some cucumbers, took out some cream cheese and matzo, a brunch homage to lox and bagels. After folding the omelet, he took the pickles out of the fridge, started loading everything on the tray. He took the omelet off the heat and brought the tray out, putting the items on the table next to the couch and returning to the kitchen to plate the omelet. He used the tray to carry that out, along with the pitcher of iced tea and glasses. Perfect.
Then, at Gideon's birthday,
He led her into the kitchen just in time to take the corn dogs out. They smelled amazing,
I am looking forward to having some of those.
she said, grinning at him.
I might have missed some, but you get the point. Look, when it comes to writing about food, not everyone's on the same level as Anthony Bourdain, but Xan West's food writing reveals a very limited perspective, as if their understanding of culinary critique was forged from McDonald's billboards. There's no depth, it's just quick snapshots with advertiser-friendly buzzwords. This book keeps reminding the audience that Ernest loves cooking, but let's be real, he cooks like a damn child, with zero ambition in his ingredients or process. Was he promoted to head chef of the polycule after demonstrating he could boil water? All of the food prepared by someone else sounds equally mundane and forgettable. The way to break the old never trust a skinny chef rule. And, okay, one more side tangent. I'm getting Troublesome Crush derangement syndrome because I'm reminded of this book everywhere. But I was reading Magic Pill, The Extraordinary Benefits and Disturbing Risk of the New Weight Loss Drug by Johann Hari. The title's a little misleading. It's more of a cultural studies book about obesity and how Ozempic will impact this than it is a number-crunching data report on Ozempic. Either way, I loved it. Hari has such an engaging, conversational writing style for a very complex topic, and he does make a pretty active effort to hear out all sides on the issue, which is nice. He starts the book with an anecdote about his friend Hannah. When I was 19 years old, I went to the National Student Drama Festival in the faded English seaside town of Scaraboo. Every year, students in Britain who stage plays apply to take part, and theater professionals come and assess your work. And if it's good enough, you're invited to perform your play by the sea and compete against other students from all over the country, get seen by agents, and potentially win awards. That year, some of my friends got through to the finals, and I went along for the ride. It meant that I watched about 20 plays in a few days. Some were brilliant, some were lousy, but it was seeing the worst of them that in a strange way changed my life. One afternoon, I sat down to watch a play called Atlantica. It was written and performed as a realistic drama, about a group of scientists who were confronting a peculiar and disturbing problem. All over the world, whales were hurling themselves onto beaches and slowly dying. Nobody knew why. It was almost as though these giant blubbery creatures were killing themselves. Were they trying to escape pollution? Did they have brain disease? What was happening? The play followed these scientists as they took boats out into the ocean, observed the whales in the wild, to try to figure out this mystery. But when they did, something disturbing happened. Suddenly, the whales charged their boats, trying to break them in half. As the scientists tried to speed away, one cried, "Oh my god, we've got sperm whale riding shotgun!" One of the scientists turned to another and said, "David, do you think that whales are..." Dramatic pause. "Evil?" Everyone sitting in the audience near us seemed to be leaning into the seriousness of the drama, caught up in its spell. Everyone, that is, except for me, and one other person. In the seat next to mine in the darkness, there was a young woman who I could see was physically shaking with laughter. Tried really hard not to look at her, because I was afraid I would let out a howl. The more intently the rest of the audience followed the play, the more we began to shake. "These whales are going to kill us all," one of the scientists cried. The other scientists gasped. "No," they said. "You can't." I have to become a whale." And then, with orchestral music swelling in the background, he leaped into the water and transformed into a whale. Curtain applause. The woman who had been rocking with suppressed laughter in the darkness hurried out of the auditorium and ran around the corner. I followed her. Without saying a word, we both began to cry laughing. She yelled, "Do you think whales are evil?" And I shouted back, "I have to become a whale." I literally fell to the floor. That night, Hannah and I began to tour the fast food outlets of Scaraboo. We started with the fish and chip shop, that headed to a kebab shop, then a fried chicken shop. It was only there that I looked at her properly for the first time. She had mousy brown hair and a huge stomach, and she spoke with a musical lilt, as if she was always trying to caress more humor out of the world. At the time, I was overweight, and she liked to describe herself as deliciously enormous. For years, Hana and I would go to the Edinburgh Festival, a cultural volcano where tens of thousands of performers descended onto the medieval streets of the city and performed for over 1 million annual visitors. You'd walk up the Royal Mile, the city's central artery, and all around you, people are performing parts of their plays. They're juggling, they're dancing, they're handing you flyers. Inspired by Atlantica, we would deliberately seek out the worst-sounding plays and see them all. Graham, the world's fastest blind man, a music about a blind sprinter, we dashed there as fast as our bulk would let us. Every afternoon, we drank milkshakes at the filing station, a restaurant on the Royal Mile. Hana had an incredibly beguiling way of befriending people. She drew them to her with her mix of extreme vulnerability and extreme vulgarity. Most of her running jokes are so extreme, I can't write them down, even here. But I can tell you that one day, one of the waitresses in the filing station laughed so hard at one of her obscene jokes that she spilled a banana milkshake all over me. Our friendship became a rat-a-tat-tat of shared jokes and shared obsessions. We loved Stephen Sondheim musicals, and we prided ourselves that our favorite was, at that time, the most obscure. Merrily We Roll Along. It's the story of three friends, told backwards. Starts with the central characters as jaded, bitter, drunk 40-somethings, then rolls back the years, scene after scene, till they are young and naive and optimistic, just starting out. There's a song in it, Old Friends, about how, even if you argue with your old friends, they're always there. Lodesters for how you live. I thought of it as my and Hannah's song. I'll cut the passage off here, and full disclosure, I skipped around so I was only sharing the parts about musicals. And I'm bringing this up because this passage made me understand the appeal of show tunes. The immediate connection that Hari has with Hana was pure magic. I didn't get any of that from Troublesome Crush. They make references to show tunes, but it's nothing particularly deep or interesting. Felt more like Xan West wanted you to know that they're into these musicals, but it's all just surface level references. Figured all the references to musicals in Troublesome Crush were like an in-group thing that you have to be a part of to understand. But then I saw stories share their love of musicals in a deep, interesting way, and it wasn't even the point of the book. Anyway, back to the ending of Troublesome Crush, where Nora and Ernest have their first BDSM sexy time. I am using the most sarcastic of air quotes, since nothing explicitly horny comes of this harnessing/baking session. I'll be real, I don't get it. I mean, I get the whole hottie maid fantasy, but it's a little weirder if your fantasy aids with maid-chan folding your laundry and calling an Uber. Really, is there nothing else that you want? I am co-signing my bewilderment as someone who's drawn some pretty unusual and questionable Rule 34. Sometimes as a joke, sometimes because I'm into that shit and literally no one else is making of it. There's infinite ways sexuality can manifest, and I'd also like to co-sign this as someone who's read a lot of slice of life manga. But even in the most mild and easygoing stories, there's got to be some sort of payoff. And I guess the payoff here is the two metamours consummating their relationship in this atypical way. I guess. Sidestepping a more direct sexuality in this story feels wasted, but in line with how dumb the rest of it played out. I think my frustration and confusion, or bigotry if you're firmly on the author side, comes from the fact that this has the facade of horniness, but seems firmly committed to dodging the explicitly sexual. For example, if you do to the fantasy of my hottie maid folded my clothes and just left because her shift was over, then you can get into feelings of patheticness, the enticement of knowing she'll come back, the excitement of seeing her jiggle while she's touching up the house. But what's Troublesome Crush's epilogue supposed to do for anyone? I'm doing my best to empathize how someone can to this, and yes, I control F search for asexuality, and it never came up to describe Ernest and Nora, so presumably, these two would be down to I know by grumbling about this, I'm missing the whole damn point of the book. It's supposed to be cute and soft and no conflict and all cuddles, so the big damn non-coom at the end is totally aligned with the rest of its values. I'm just saying, man, wasted opportunity. I know this is just one author and they're not the BDSM Lorax who speaks for the kink, but I have to wonder if kink feels it needs to fight against some sort of outside stigma from the vanillas. I recently read The Queering of Corporate America, How Big Business Went from LGBTQ Adversary to Ally, the 2019 book by Carlos A. Ball. It's a pretty solid overview of how big business pushed and responded to gay activism. I'll say it puts a little too much praise for Corpo America and dodges the issue of performative rainbow capitalism, but it felt like a pretty decent entry point. Anyway, the book touches a little on media representation. Ball observes that prior to the 1990s, gay characters in American mainstream media were often portrayed as violent, sociopathic, or depraved, and that totally sucked. Chapter 2 discusses a 1967 news special by Mike Wallace titled The Homosexuals. The special included interview clips from gay individuals, making it the first time many viewers heard directly from queer people. While it was a significant step forward, the tone of the special was predominantly cautionary. Let me share with you what the book said. At one point during the show, Wallace used a concerned voice to tell his viewers that the average homosexual, if there be such, is promiscuous. He is not interested or capable of a lasting relationship like that of a heterosexual marriage. His sex life, his love life, consists of a series of one-chance encounters at the club and bars he inhabits. And even on the streets of the city, the pickup, the one-night stand, these are characteristics of the homosexual relationship. Wallace concluded the show by stating that this is the dilemma of the homosexual. Told by the medical profession he is sick, by the law he's a criminal, shunned by employers, rejected by heterosexual society, incapable of fulfilling relationship with a woman, or for that matter, with a man. At the center of his life, he remains anonymous, a displaced person, an outsider. It was harsh, but I guess that's more or less what the layman thought of the average homosexual at the time. So I wonder, is kink culture facing a PR crisis nowadays? Is there a push to make kink look cute and fluffy to counter the idea that everyone involved is a Christian Grey-style sociopath? Or is the author Xan West the lone nutjob? And even if they're the outlier, it makes me feel hopeless, even if I'm completely removed from this group. I see this with the furry fandom. Guys who constantly insist that furries are normal, and it's
Just a fandom. We're not all constantly having sex in costumes. Ew.
It's all about making a big damn show about how they're totally harmless. Don't worry, no one here is actually pissing in a litter box. This is frustrating because most normies will either shrug off furry as some anime/geek thing, or they see anything even remotely in that sphere as unhinged degeneracy. And I just want to know, why are you clawing so hard for out-group approval? Is this mild acknowledgement from normies more gratifying than the fursuit sex you swear you're not having? I thought even in the sexually degenerate world of kink and show tunes, there wouldn't be the constant, self-conscious need to prove yourself as being morally pure. I expected in polite society, in church, even in IRL furry hangouts. And here it is, manifesting in a new way. The characters in Troublesome Crush are constantly second-guessing and correcting themselves over saying and doing the right thing, and a lot of that is due to the protagonist's anxiety. But even if you grade everyone else on a curve, it's not like anyone is able to just fucking chill. It's a constant stream of negotiations that surpass the typical vanilla dealings in dating, sex, or hanging out. This is not just about figuring out where to eat. Everything is a high-stakes game of psychological brinkmanship. This excerpt from Chapter 3 gets to the heart of it, although the narrative insists that they aren't.
Yeah, I get that. I mostly stick to other fat and disabled play partners and dates myself. Though there are exceptions, like Gideon.
Nora smiled as she said Gideon's name. Wait, did that mean she didn't know about Gideon's depression? Or maybe she didn't think of depression as a disability. How could he find out what she meant? I get what you mean about wanting disabled partners. There are some things that are just easier for me when I'm with someone else who's also dealing with mental illness. Things I don't need to explain.
Yes, exactly. It helps to be able to say I'm triggered, or I'm flaring, and they have a sense of that, even if their mental illness looks different.
Oh, good. Maybe she just meant that Gideon wasn't fat, and that's what she was referring to earlier. Or maybe Gideon hadn't told her about his depression. Ernest needed to respect that, if that was the case. Though after 9 months, he would hope trust was there. But, on the other hand, Gideon did keep things pretty close to his chest. Ernest needed to ask him if he had told her, because otherwise, he might totally blurt it out accidentally. Oh, he had gotten distracted and lost his end of the conversation, hadn't he? What had she said? Yep, it's good to not have to explain so much.
Then, later, in Chapter 7, Nora and Ernest are talking over Instant Messenger.
Oh, thanks. Well, I'm demiromantic. Do you know what that means?
It's kind of like demisexual, except it's on the aromantic spectrum instead of the asexual spectrum, right?
Well, the thing is, aromanticism isn't the same as asexuality. but people often talk about it, like aerospec folks like me are just another kind of asexual. So, it's kind of a touchy thing to compare them.
Oh, I'm sorry. My best friend JD is demisexual. I have a regular play partner, Lizette, who's aro-ace. I was extrapolating from what I know from them, but I didn't mean to group them together as if they're all the same. Maybe you can tell me what it means to be demiromantic.
Okay, so I have a complicated relationship with romance. In general, takes me a while to recognize when I'm romantically attracted to someone, and it's more difficult for me to figure out. And I generally have romantic feelings after I have some other connection with someone, some other kind of relationship. Like, for me, romantic attraction builds on a foundation of other emotions and intimacy. Romance is not the center of my romantic relationships, or more important than any other aspect of my relationships. I'm in love with Gideon, but I'm also family with him, live with him, and am his good boy, and those things are just as important to me. I was his good boy first, then his family, before romance came into the picture with him.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you, Ernest. I have a clearer picture, I think. So, when you say you have a crush, does that mean you're romantically attracted to me?
Yes, that's what I mean.
This is where I feel my autism truly emerge. And I guess now's the time to clarify that I don't actually do 100 push-ups a day. It's more like 25, and they're all on an incline since I'm paranoid about damaging my foppish little wrists. I am too self-absorbed to see these social balancing acts and identity assertions as worth the effort. I'm sure there's a bigger reason to assert yourself in like a Harvey, if we all come out, they can't stop all of us milk kind of way. But the mindset in Troublesome Crush feels like everyone's taken a part-time job as an unpaid PR intern for the cause. Is there a better way? I don't know. Pardon the mumble mouth filler words I'm about to use, because I'm not really confident about what I'm about to say. But I'm personally divided on all of this. If I could have a little less of the typical hone tatamai attitude about my own sexuality, I would be happier. It's not something that comes up a lot, since I've been to more churches than gay bars. But when I'm somewhere with a higher than average gay population, some goddamn busybody will inevitably manifest and ask what's my deal. Sometimes, not always, they'll act like they're trying to make me admit a queerness. Feel like either a gotcha or a, hey, are you a narc? Kind of questioning. Or maybe it's some convoluted way of flirting. I don't know. Not interested in finding out or preparing an answer for next time I'm asked. Which is completely opposite of Troublesome Crush and the confident pronoun parade it gives to all of its characters. But I look at the mindset in Troublesome Crush, and none of it seems particularly happy or anything I'd want to strive for. I guess this works for their particular branch of autism/anxiety. I guess. I don't get why they're doing all of this if it isn't making them happy. Gideon wasn't exactly thrilled about his 2 birthday parties, yet he went along with it. What's the point? And yes, I am still grappling with the absurdity of an adult needing 2 birthdays. I deserve a medal for going this long without shoving my own writing in everyone's face. My light novel, Polymon How to Be Polyamorous in a World of Monsters and Furries, has an autistic protagonist, and their fantasy world hasn't formally adopted the DSM, so you won't see any in-text confirmation of this. And there's a chapter where another character turns directly to the camera and explains what's a polyamory. I have zero problem boasting that it is the best English language light novel about autism and polyamory. So if you agree Troublesome Crush sucks, read my book instead. But the goals, expectations, and vibe are pretty opposite of Troublesome Crush. So I'd like to bring Aniapt Animal Apartment as my example for show and tell. Aniapt isn't explicitly about polyamory, but it's going for a similar feel-good hangout vibe as Troublesome Crush. Most conflicts dissolve into nothing, and a lot of it is just the characters anticipating something bad will happen, and it all turns out to be a big shrug. Something I've always wanted to work into Ante-Apt is why Qian and Riri are friends. I don't mean in like a how they met backstory kind of way, but more of getting into their emotional connection. Qian is the type A salaryman square, while Riri is the fun-loving, openly bisexual, poly, flamboyant roommate. And the core of why they're friends is that they have a deep mutual respect for each other. There's some friends you hang out with because they're funny, they're interesting, shared interest, or maybe just proximity. Qian and Riri have something a little deeper. Both parties feel that if they could be 10% more like the other, they would be better off. They're both so wildly opposite that they feel just being around the other is good for them. So I look at Troublesome Crush, and it does sort of give me that same feeling. Their mindset is completely alien to how I operate, but I don't know if I'm looking at a Qian or a Riri. They seem to be the worst mix of both. If I got 10% closer to whatever mindset is held by Troublesome Crush, I know I would be miserable.